Hello, it's Andrine, a Jewish American priestess, and today I'm bringing you a reading of a Pick a Stone about what is helping you endure right now. What is the eternal in your life bringing in that's giving you patience and endurance, and however you perceive that stick-to-itiveness and persistence that comes in your life. And to that end, we're going to be doing a Pick a Stone, and I'll put the timestamps below, and then you can choose your reading directly. And I will be doing Hebrunes in those readings and possibly a card as well. So let's zoom in a little bit to see our stones today. So starting on the left, we have this stone, which is a soapstone heart from Kenya. It's carved with these white spots. That's stone number 1. Stone number 2 is this granite stone. It's a rough, uncut, sparkly stone. It's number 2. Number 3 is this rose quartz in the shape of a heart. It's got some lovely white veins and black veins as well. And stone number 4 is a simple river rock, kind of a palm stone. So take a moment to determine which of these stones is calling to you today for your reading. And I'll put the timestamps down below, and I will see you in your separate readings. Hello, stone number 1. You've chosen this beautiful soapstone from Kenya. It's black or dark gray, and each of these little spots are actually a divot carved into the stone. I think it's lovely, one of my favorite polka dot rocks that I have. So we're going to set this up to the side here, where you can still see it. And maybe I'll put it on the side, actually, more visible there. And we're going to pull out a deck of cards today and get one card from this deck that will be a significator to your reading as well. Let me stir these up and see which deck wants to come out for you, stone number 1 people. There it is. We have the Aquarian Tarot. So I'll go get that deck. I'll be right back. Okay, here's the Aquarian Tarot. And we're going to shuffle that up, and we're going to get one card as a significator for you for this reading. Give us a direction about, again, what is bringing us endurance in eternity, persistence, patience, all the things that we need to carry on and move forward. And there is our card. All right, let's take a look. We have the Ace of Swords. Very lovely. So the Ace of Swords is, all aces are about new beginnings. So something is starting. And swords are the air signs, so they have with them this idea of communication and thought. So new thoughts, new ideas, the ability to speak clearly and to speak out what you need to say. I love that this card has a couple of roses in it, those white roses, which remind me of the white rose being carried by the Fool as he steps off into a new beginning. So some kind of new beginning happening here with speech and thought, coming up with a new idea and a new way of saying that to the world. That is our significator for you about what is helping you to endure. So I'm going to put that into a little card holder here. Maybe I'll back it out so we can see everything. And the way I'm going to do this Hebrunes reading today is I'm going to stir them up, and then I'm going to just take a handful. What you're going to do is scatter spread. And these are our letters today. Let me take out the one that's face down. I believe that's the Ein Sof. It is. I'm going to turn the rest of these right side up so they're a little easier to see. Okay. So these are the things that are helping you right now with your persistence, endurance, stick-to-itiveness. We have, interestingly, right below the Ace of Swords is the letter Pe. And the letter Pe is considered the mouth. The word Pe means mouth in Hebrew. So it's the mouth of the divine speaking creation into existence. And so it's about new beginnings because it's that divine mouth part saying, let there be light. Let there be what needs to be. Let me create with words. And because it's below the Ace of Swords, that's perfect. It is about that idea of using your words to create what you'd like to see in the world. We have that gift given to us by the divine, the ability to speak what we need to see in the world and create through speech how we'd like to see things. The Pe is also the number 80 in Gematria, and the number 8 has that infinity loop in it, and 10 times 8 would signify an ultimate manifestation of the infinite. So we have an infinity spiral here with the Pe. You can see how it spirals out and spirals in. So this idea of the infinite and speech right here wrapped up in the letter Pe. And the letter Pe is the first letter of the word Pa'am, which means time in Hebrew. So speaking in right time, new ideas, new beginnings, is definitely the thing that's going to help you endure through this period of time. That's the highest letter in our reading as well, which would indicate it's the most important. So I love that it's fallen right below the Ace of Swords. The next highest letter in our reading is over here on the right. It's the letter Dalet. And Dalet represents a doorway. So it's about stepping through a doorway. And it represents this liminal space. So you're going from one thing to another, and that follows with a new beginning that oftentimes it will follow an ending. Dalet is sometimes seen as an ending and a new beginning, like the birth canal. The delta of Venus is basically the same letter. It's that vaginal birth canal through which all children are born in the mammalian world. So when one thing ends, when gestation ends, birth begins and a new world comes into being. And we've got this ace representing newness and the Dalet representing a doorway through which we will step. So once you've spoken what you need to say, that doorway will appear. Sometimes I correspond the Dalet to the death card in tarot because it is about transitions and transformations. The word Dal in Hebrew means poor or poor person or someone who is lowly. So it has to do with humility as well. Remembering to remain humble as you make your transitions so that you don't hit your head on the doorway on your way through. So Dalet is here, and it's the number 4. So it has this kind of stability to it, like the 4 edges of a door. And it also harkens back to the 4-letter tetragrammaton, the divine name, the Yud He Vav He. So as you step forward through that door, remember to bring with you the divine. And that's over here by the stone, which I also love because it speaks to the heart. The Dalet is standing here right by this heart stone. So our hearts are strong. We're taking our hearts with us as we step through that doorway and leaving behind that which is no longer serving us as well. sort of in this more central place of our reading, we have the letter Bet. And the letter Bet is the second letter of the alphabet, but it's the first letter of Torah, Bereshit, in the beginning. It represents a house or a home, and to that end it can mean the place where you live, wherever you dwell. It might be a building, it might be a community, it could be the world itself. Frequently I think of it as the body, because we carry our bodies with us wherever we go, whatever building we're in, whatever community we're in, we always live inside of our bodies. So the Bet being here in the center is also about new beginnings, because it is, like I said, the first letter of Torah, Bereshit. And it means in, and it means at, and it means toward. So we're going through this doorway toward something, possibly finding our home, finding the place where we should be dwelling, finding more comfort in our body, really resting in that ability to be comfortable wherever we are. The Bet is also the letter that rules over the day of Shabbat, so resting in that, resting in our homes, finding a place to sit and dwell where we can be comfortable and rest. And you may notice with the Pei, as I said, it's the first, it's the mouth of the divine, and Bet is the first letter of Torah. And the Bet fits very nicely right inside the Pei. You can kind of see how they would snuggle together. So it's as if this word is coming out of the mouth of the divine. So new beginnings again. That's the thing that's helping you endure, is finding your comfort in your body, finding your rest. Next to that, we have the letter Samech. And Samech is the letter that represents a circle, cycles, seasons, being surrounded. The word sovev, which means surround, starts with the Samech. So being surrounded with protection, being surrounded with love, like a big hug. You're setting up good boundaries. The letter Samech in the Paleo, Proto-Hebrew, looked like a thorn. And you can still see there's a little thorn in the upper left corner there. And it's about setting up good edges. So a thorny hedge around your property, around your home. You've got this fence that's made up of thorns to keep out predators and to keep in livestock. And so they're permeable boundaries. You'll have to be able to get in and out as necessary. But those thorns are necessary to keep you safe also. So setting up good boundaries as you create your home, create your own space, start this new beginning with the Ace of Swords, the way you imagine it to be, the way you speak that into existence. Remember to set up good boundaries with your speech and with other people speaking to you. I would say, because we've got the swords here, don't let other people speak to you in a way that is not correct, that is not helpful and healing and loving. Set up boundaries around that. And remember that boundaries are for you, they're not for other people. You can't say, you can't speak to me that way. You can make a request, please don't speak to me that way. But the real boundary is, if you speak to me that way, I will leave for 30 minutes. I will not have these conversations with you any longer. So making sure that the boundaries you set up are things you can enforce and hold, that you will have the ability to persist and endure, that it's not reliant on what anybody else does. Because that's the important thing about boundaries. They are not for other people. They are for you to hold and to have. So setting up good boundaries, making sure you're surrounding yourself with people who are loving and kind to you. And it's about, again, cycles and seasons. It looks a little bit like a wheel. So remembering that as things turn, as the world turns and as the seasons turn, that you will come back around, that it's not always winter, that springtime will come and then summer will come and harvest will come. And then the winter will come again, that these things come in cycles. But you're never back in the same place when you come around. You're always a little bit more, you're a little changed, a little more new. So these new beginnings lead to cycles that you can track when you come back around to this time next year. What's changed? How have you improved? How has the world changed for you and in you and with you. So that's Samic. And then over here in the lower right, we have the Ein Sof. And it's just opposite the Pe here. The Ein Sof is that without end. It's the boundlessness, the eternal, the blank page, the substrate onto which all the letters are carved, that which existed before time and will continue to exist after time, the infinite itself. So the thing that may help you endure in this period of time we're in right now is just trusting in the infinite. It can seem scary to look up into the stars and feel small and insignificant, but it is an important piece of this existence, is recognizing our place in it, recognizing that we are but a small, insignificant fleck in the universe, and yet the world was created for us. There's a Talmudic dictate that one should carry two pieces of paper, one that says, "The world was created for me," and the other that says, "I am dust and ashes." And balancing those two things in a way that gives you the ability to endure. That the universe was created for me and I am insignificant in it. Both can be true at the same time. And it's important to remember that the infinite itself, the divine that is the infinite, will endure, and you endure within it, regardless of what happens. And since it's opposite the Pe here, which represents that ultimate manifestation of the infinite with the 80, it feels really appropriate that we have this kind of diagonal here with Pe, Beit, and the Ein Sof. And down at the bottom of our reading, we have the Aleph, the number 1. So coming back to new beginnings again. The Aleph is the first letter of the alphabet. It's the mother letter of air. So it's about breath. It's this place in the world where we can exist. Not up in space where the sun and the moon and the stars exist, and not under the water where we cannot breathe. But this middle place, the Aleph, where air is, where we can exist and have a life. And it's representative of the divine above and the earth below, and the connection and division between each. The unity within multiplicity, and the multiplicity within unity, which is to say, there are millions and trillions and quadrillions of stars in the universe, but there is only one universe. There's only one divine, but there's infinite manifestations of the divine. Similarly, there's trillions of cells in your body, but there's only one body. So we have to reconcile that balancing again between the infinite and the oneness of all. So this is here supporting us at the very bottom of our reading, the oneness. And because it is the number 1, it speaks again to the Ace of Swords, that new beginning. And because it's the mother letter of air, we have the Ace of Swords here basically twice, the 1 of air. Beautiful reading. The thing that's going to help you endure the most is speaking what you would like to see into the world. Taking time to imagine in your mind how you would like things to be, and then saying it out loud. You could say it out loud to yourself. You could say it out loud to the divine. You could say it out loud to another person. But whatever it is that you imagine you would love to see in the world, become very precise. Use your sword to carve out exactly what you would love to see in the world, and then speak it out loud. Those words have power. Saying it out loud to the universe, exactly how you would love to see things be, is essential in creating. It's the very first act of creation, is that speaking. So say out loud what you'd like to see. Trust in the infinite here. Know that that spiral of time will unfold in the time of the divine. Walk through the doorway. Whatever it is opens up after you speak those words. Step through it. Take your heart with you. Be aware that transitions sometimes feel like death, but they're also a birth. So after you speak, the doorway will appear. Step through it. Find comfort in your home, in your body, in whatever it is. Find rest wherever you are. Make sure you set up good boundaries. Surround yourself with good boundaries, the thorny hedges, and with people who love and support you. And know that that wheel turns. That even if you're in a hard place, even if they're in a transition place, that wheel will turn. the seasons and cycles transform, and you'll be in a new place this time next year, know that the infinite is here with you, that you can always trust in that greater wholeness that is out there, the boundlessness of the divine. And you're supported by the one, that you have this ability to speak, that you have an ability to breathe right now. So use your breath, speak what you need to say, start a new thing, and this will help you endure and persist through this period of time. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to this reading. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I'll look forward to seeing you here next time. Hello, stone number 2. Those of you who chose this beautiful granite stone. I love the black and white of it, and I love how sparkly it is in the sunshine. Hopefully you can see that picking up on the camera here. So we're going to pull out a deck of cards from our bowl of cards, card decks. And from that deck, we're going to pull one card as a significator for your reading. It'll lead us into the reading about what is it that's serving you in terms of endurance and eternity and perpetuity and patience. Let's see which deck wants to come out today. That one's jumped up on the edge. Let's take a look. And we have soul cards too. All right, I'll run and grab that. I'll be right back. Okay, here's our soul cards too. And this is a deck of cards that are just a variety of paintings that were put together by an artist. So they don't have the same significances as, say, tarot cards or oracle cards, but we get to interpret how we see them. So let's see if we got one that wants to come out today, specific to your reading about what is giving you the power to endure. And I see this one here. Let's turn that over and see what we have. Okay, this is what your card looks like. There's a figure standing in this sort of opening, holding their hands out. And the figure is, it's hard to tell what gender, whether there's any gender to them at all. But I love that this opening here is, it's got veins on it, if you can see that, like a leaf. And down here there are also leaves, or I'm thinking it's leaves and not feathers, but leaves that are coming off on both sides of them. So there's something about the structure of a leaf. It has these many veins here, and the glowing, I love how it's glowing, and they're coming through in light here. And they may be stepping through a portal. I love that, it looks like a portal. So there's some kind of portal that's coming for you that is manifesting in the form of nature, and the veins in the leaf are nurturing it as it sends you off on this path. The colors here with yellow and purple and blue, which indicate like the solar plexus, the crown chakra, and the throat. So all those things may be up for you in terms of what is helping you right now through this time of endurance and persistence. Reaching out to nature, stepping through a portal, and being nourished by the veins that come down the leaf. I'll set that in this card holder up at the top if we can still see it. And then the way we're going to do this is we're going to take our Hebrunes, shuffle them up, and we're going to just take a handful, cast them down, and read what we have. Okay, let's see what we have. I'm going to turn them so that they are right side up, even though some of them are hanging off the edge here. Take out the ones that are face down, except for that one, which is the inside. It's perfect. Okay, let's see. So at the top of the reading we have the Ein Sof, and that is that without end. It's the blank, that endlessness, boundlessness, and the void. That which came before time and comes after time ceases to exist. So it's a substrate, it's the divine themselves, the eternal. So as we're asking ourselves what can support us during this time of endurance and persistence and eternity, it's the eternal in themselves. It's just knowing that eternity continues to exist, whether we like it or not, whether we're able to focus or back out enough to focus on it or not. The eternal is here, and it's the highest thing in the reading. So it really does speak to that persistence, and the most useful thing is this idea of eternity, knowing that eternity is there for you, that the eternal one, that the divine themselves is here. And it is sort of like a primordial chaos. In the outside of this card, we have this kind of formlessness that we don't really know what it's coming from or what's around it. It's just this formlessness. So it's sort of speaks to that externalness of the formlessness of this picture as well. There's something, as we're coming into existence, stepping out of the void, that primordial chaos that came into existence just at the very, very beginning of the universe. And what existed before the universe existed? The nothingness, the endlessness of all. The next letter in our reading is the mother letter of fire, the Shin. And you can see here that it looks a little bit like fire. And it's got those three flames looking up from the bottom with the Yud, the letter Yud at the top, and these three Vavs coming down and maybe another Vav at the bottom. So Yud is that letter that means, it's the first letter of the divine name, the Yud He Vav He, the one who is becoming. And the Shin itself is about fire and transformation. It's the first letter of the word, the Shekhinah, which is the indwelling presence of the divine. So here it is again, this idea of the first thing that came into existence is light. Let there be light. And this represents the fire, the lights of the sky, the sun, the moon, the stars, the light itself. So out of the chaos comes light and the indwelling presence of the divine, the Shekhinah. And it's the first letter of the word Shini, which means change, and Shuva, which means to return, and Shalom, which means wholeness and peace. So we have a lot of concepts here within the Shin. Coming out of this void, we have fire. We come through the fire. And I like that it looks like fire. When I notice the card has got that light in it. It's got that brilliance that's almost hard to look at because it's so bright. So we're walking through the fire, walking out of the void, through the fire into existence, enduring through all of it. And fire can be challenging because it is hot, but it's a transformative thing. It's a transformation through fire. And over here on the right we have the Dalet, which is the letter that means a doorway. And what have we got here? We've got a portal, exactly that. The Dalet represents the liminal space between one world and the other. That's exactly the picture that we're looking at, coming from the nothingness into the somethingness, stepping through the fire, through that portal. And as we walk through that liminal space, what do we carry with us? You know, we don't have, sometimes when we go through a small opening, we don't have a lot of room to bring much with us. The Dalet represents also the female genitalia, the delta of Venus, through which we are all born into this world. And I can't help but notice that this picture also looks a little bit like the vulva. So as we come through into the world, as we're born into the world, we have to come through that doorway. We have to step through the door in order to be born. And even if it feels uncomfortable, and even if it feels like a transition we might not want to make, that even if there's burning and fire that comes through that transition, we have to make it, because if we do not get born, then both the mother and child will perish. Dalit is affiliated sometimes with the death card in tarot. It's one of the affiliations that I make because it is a transition portal to the other side. And Dalit is the number 4 in Gematria, so it has this sense of stability with the 4 corners of the doorway, the 4 letters of the divine name, the Yud He Vav He, the 4 elements of earth, air, fire, and water, and the 4 directions, north, south, east, and west. It rules over the planet Mars in the sky, so there's something that's challenging about it, Mars, which can sometimes seem contentious, but is really protective on some level. So, yeah, we're coming from the nothing through the fire, through the doorway, into this next thing, which, if we look at the next letter in our reading, is the letter Kuf. And the letter Kuf is the first letter of the word Kadosh, meaning sacredness. Sacredness in terms of something that is designated for divine service. So there are many things that are inherently considered sacred, but anything can be made sacred by designating it for divine service. This is also the first letter of the word Kof, which means monkey. And you can see it looks like it has a little monkey tail down there at the edge, like a monkey sitting on top of a pole. And so it harkens back to our animal nature as well. This idea that we are a primate species that can sometimes just fling our poo at each other. But so we have these baser natures that are just about, taking care of our animal selves and finding pleasure where we can and food and not really worrying about things that are highly spiritual. But it's also the same letter that begins the word Kadosh. And some would say that animals are inherently holy or sacred because they don't have any concept of doing right or wrong. They just go with their animal nature. We too have animal nature, but we also have this other ability to perceive whether something is right or wrong, good or evil. So how do we balance those two things? How do we balance our animal self with our desire to be designated for divine service? And that's one of the ways we endure, by finding that balance. It's one of the ways we persist, by maybe resisting our animal nature, or maybe tapping into our animalistic self and finding the ways that we can fulfill those needs that are base, or perceived as base in many religions or many different types of societies. That, sexuality is not inherently bad. It is inherently human and inherently holy, if we can designate it as such. If we can designate it for divine service. That eating food can be seen as gluttony, but it's also really important to make our bodies continue to work. That feeling pleasure, there's nothing evil in feeling pleasure, if we can do it in a way that honors the eternal. So we're balancing here, and that's one of the ways we're finding our endurance, is balancing the animalistic nature with that are designated for divine service. And the last letter in our reading here is the Aleph, and it is the letter that means, it's the number 1, it's the first letter of the Aleph Bet. So it's the number 1, it's the mother letter of air. It's the place where we can exist in the world, breathing, without having to, be underwater or up in the sky. And it is a balancing letter with heaven above and divinity below and earth below, and connection and division between the two. So stepping through that portal, that Dalit, as we come through from wherever we've been, that nowhere that we've been, in through the fire, into this space where we can exist and breathe, the mother letter of air, this balancing of above and below. Aleph is the first letter of the word El Elyon, Elohim, many of the names of God begin with Aleph, Adonai, and also the first letter of the word human, Adam, and mud, Adamah. So there is something about balancing the divinity above and humanity below, and enduring, knowing that the one is here with us, and that we are made up of oneness, that we have that same set of characteristics within us that allow us to know that we are full of divine spirit. That's what gives us life, that breath that has been breathed into us. And we have been set in this middle place where we can breathe what we need to breathe. So as we're coming into a place of balance again, above and below, human and divine, again, the kuf with kadosh and kof, above and below, designation for divine service and animalistic nature. We've got these two letters, which are very, very similar in that way. And the two mother letters of Shin and Aleph, fire and air, coming from the Ein Sof, the nothingness, through the fire toward the air, stepping through that doorway and designating our works and our actions for divine service, even if they are animalistic in their origin, even if we have these human body need desires, we can still designate them toward divinity. And when we do that, we'll find our way to endure. We'll find our way through to eternity. It goes both directions. We come from the nothing, through the fire, into the air, designate our lives for service after stepping through that doorway. And we also exit the same way, coming back out into the manyness, the Ein Sof, that without end. So for those of you who chose the granite and this card of portals walking through from the nothingness into the somethingness and maybe back out again, this has been your reading today on endurance and eternity. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll look forward to seeing you here next time. Hello, those of you who chose the pink rose quartz heart today. This is what your heart looks like with a crack in it, which I love, that white vein, and this spot on the bottom, and we've got some dark spots on the side. Beautiful stone heart. And we're talking about endurance and eternity today, and what will serve you right now as you're considering those options. We're going to pull out a deck of cards from our bowl. One of these slips of paper has a deck that will give us a significator card today for your reading. And so I'm going to stir them up and see what wants to be coming out for your heart endurance reading today with these stones. Pick this one here. We have the Golden Botticelli Tarot. Let me go grab that deck. I'll be right back. Okay, here's our deck, and we'll set that slip of paper back into the bowl, and we'll shuffle up and see if we have a card that wants to come out to signify for you for the idea of eternity and endurance and persistence and patience. Like, oh, that's your card. Let's take a look at it. So we have the Nine of Wands. All right. And this particular Nine of Wands, you can see this is a giant bird on the top of one of the wands. This person is walking with their horse and their some kind of weapon, halberd or something. The Knight of Wands is sometimes seen as the wounded warrior, somebody who's returning from battle and maybe a little bit, I would say gun shy, but they weren't using guns in this particular era, so battle shy. They're quite tired of fighting, ready to put down those weapons and go home. You've got a white horse, which shows some sort of victory, but a red tunic, which would indicate much in the way of carnal knowledge in terms of ancient artistry by Botticelli. And beneath that is a dark, dark blue shirt, which also would indicate some kind of celestial or heavenly connection. I'm not sure what the bird indicates, but birds are often about freedom and beauty and peace. So after returning from a battle, walking through this stony field on their way home, they look tired and ready to lay down their weapons. So I would say it's interesting that the cloak also looks very much like the color of the stone. That, as we were saying, this heart has a crack in it, that this broken-hearted person is returning home after battle with this pink-colored cloak and ready to return home and go back to peace. So after having endured a very difficult battle, it's important to make it home again on your journey, and tend to your wounds and lay down your weapons and start finding peace. So we're going to pull out some Hebrunes today as well. I'm going to shuffle these up and grab a handful and toss them down, and we'll do a scatter reading. First, I'll take out the ones that are face down, and let's see what we have left here. I'm going to turn them over so we can read them more clearly. Have everything be upright. Okay. The very top of our reading, the highest letter in our reading, is the letter Lamed. Lamed, which is the first letter of the word Lev, meaning heart, and I love that it landed above this heart here, this stone heart. It's the letter that reaches above the line, the only letter in Hebrew that reaches above the line, so it has this sense of it with aspiration, reaching up toward divinity with hope. So after a battle, after some kind of fight that you have been struggling with, it's important to reach into your heart and reach up to the divine with hope for something different and better. It's the first letter of the word learning and teaching in Hebrew, limud velamed. So there's something that we have learned from this experience, and it's time to teach that to others. Sometimes we learn best by teaching others. The letter Lamed is also connected to the digestive tract, the intestines in the body. So there may be something having to do with listening to your gut. The heart in Hebrew, Lev, is also translated as heart-mind, because we know that our hearts and our minds are connected intricately. And also this listening to our gut, it's also like listening to one's heart. So part of our way to endure is to tap into the heart, to reach up for hope, and trust our gut instinct in all of these matters as we head home from battle. That seems to be the most important thing in the reading. It's the highest in the reading. As we come down, I'll go to the next highest, which is the letter Tet. And Tet is a vessel, a cup, or a container of some kind of basket, perhaps. Sometimes it looks like a snake. It's like it's a snake in a basket. And the snake is affiliated with the goddess in ancient Hebrew deities. The snake was a healing element in the story of Moses, held up a copper snake for the people who had been bitten by snakes to be healed. So there's healing here in this cup. There is also gestation in this cup. It's the number 9 in Gematria. So it's affiliated with the 9 months of pregnancy in the human body. And it's the first letter of the word Tov, which means goodness or good. So there's something good gestating here, something healing, something that is bringing us some kind of great healing from the divine, from the goddess. If we can tap into it, if we can come home and sit in the time that it takes to gestate. So there may be some waiting that needs to happen when you return home from your battle to find the goodness within. And that's an important way to endure, is to wait out a gestation and know that in God's time, in the divine timing, goodness will come to you. Over here next to the heart, the next letter in the reading is the letter Nun. Nun is the letter that speaks to humility. You can see it looks like somebody who is kneeling or with their head bowed. and it's the first letter of the word Ne'aman, which means humility. So finding our humility, coming into a place of maybe taking some time alone to contemplate what has gone before and what we shall do next. Really tapping into our connection with divinity in a place of humility. Finding our humble selves, and maybe taking some time to be like a hermit after returning from battle, to take some time to rest and really listen to our hearts. Again, this one's sitting right next to the heart, and I love that too, because when we are in a humble space, we can better hear our heart. So that's going to help with endurance and persistence and tapping into our connection to eternity. Next, we have the letter Kuf. And Kuf is the letter that begins the word Kadosh. Kadosh meaning holiness or sacredness, designation for service to the divine. So we need to tap into that, and our inherent holiness, our inherent sacredness. That even if we've been in a place of battle, even if things have been really hard, we need to recognize that we are inherently sacred, because that comes to us from divinity. And this letter also begins the word Kof, which means monkey, and we can see a little bit of a monkey tail here. So there's animalistic nature too in our base desires that may be coming into play. And how do we balance those? By tapping into our sacredness, by really knowing that we are sacred and that we have inherent value based on that sacredness from divinity, that we have the ability to designate what we are doing toward divine service, and that gives us inherent sacredness. And that will help us endure through whatever it is we are enduring. Down at the bottom here, what's supporting us is the letter Pe. The letter Pe is the number 80 in Gematria, and it speaks to that infinity loop, number 80, which is 8 times 10. So an ultimate manifestation of the infinite, and a spiral that's spiraling infinitely in and infinitely out. It's also seen as the mouth of the divine, speaking creation into existence. So the infinite is here supporting us at the bottom and encouraging us to speak what we would like to see in the world, that we can create with our words as well. So after we've reached up with our heart and sat in our time of gestation in humility and designated ourselves for service, maybe it's time to then speak what we would like to see happening next. Create with our words the thing we would like to see happening. Giving ourselves time. Pe is the first letter of the word Pa'am, meaning time in Hebrew. So there's something about accepting things in the divine timing, because this is, again, the ultimate manifestation of the infinite here. And it's sitting at the bottom point of our reading, saying we're here to support. And then over here on the corner down below, we have the letter Chet. And Chet is the first letter of the word Chai, meaning life, and the first letter of the word Choshek, meaning darkness. Again, another balancing of life and darkness, that we can't have light without darkness, and we can't have life without darkness either. We have to have both light and darkness in our lives in order to find balance. Chet is also the letter that begins the word chuppah, and it looks like a marriage canopy. So it's about contracts and commitments, and speaking contracts into manifestation. So we may be making some contracts and making some commitments with others. It's the number 8, so it's got that infinity loop in it again. So the infinite is here twice, with the Pe with 80 and the Chet with 8 supporting us from beneath. The infinite here in its form of darkness, which can seem scary, but darkness is necessary for rest. We need to come to a place of rest when we come home and give our bodies a chance to lie down and think a little bit about what we want to do next. So we're reaching up with heart next to the pink heart here, and even though our heart has got a crack in it, we're finding our humility, sitting in gestation, finding the goodness within what has come and what will come next, designating for service to the divine what it is we'd like to see with that kadosh, with that sacredness, and speaking what we'd like to see into existence with that number 80, that infinite times 10, and the het down here at the bottom, speaking again with contracts and commitments toward another, toward ourselves and toward the divine, with that number 8 again, with the life and the darkness coming together into a wonderful balance as we walk our way home as a wounded warrior with our broken heart. We'll find our way and endure through all of this. So for those of you who chose the pink heart, this has been your reading. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you here next time. Hello, those of you who chose this river rock. This is your very simple palm stone, smooth and gray and beautiful. It's been worn smooth by the water, by the endurance of the water, by the persistence of the water. So as we try to find our way to what is going to help you endure at this time, we've got this river rock showing us what can come from endurance, this smooth, beautiful simpleness, simplicity. We're going to start by pulling out a deck from our bowl of decks to get a significator card for us. And we've got one that's jumped right up onto the edge. Let's see which deck it is. And it is the Art Oracles deck. Okay, let me go grab that and I'll be right back. Well, this is an interesting deck to have chosen because it's got a bunch of artists on it that have different stories. We will learn about one of them today. Let me pop that back in the bowl, and we'll see which card wants to come out, which artist has a message for you today from the Art Oracles about persistence and endurance and the eternal. There it is. Let's see who we have today. Jeff Koons. All right, let's just read what Jeff Koons says here. Okay, interesting card. The card itself says, "The future is big, bright, and shiny. Your balloon can't pop, but your pop can balloon. Learn the difference between camp and kitsch." Jeff Koons. Let's read a little bit about him in the book here. It says, more divisive than a U.S. presidential election, Jeff Koons is either a brilliant inquisitor of consumerist culture, or, as certain critics call him, the king of kitsch. Profoundly in tune with pop culture and commodity, Koons' work draws inspiration from Michael Jackson, balloon animals, and porn, among other household topics. Like his subjects, his mixed media output is likewise aggressively visible, whether large, inflated, colorful, shiny, X-rated, or vigorously banal. With so much buzz about the enormous financial worth of his art and the position of his brow, low, high, or medium, Koons could be an honorary Kardashian. Well, there's something to be said for art that uses pop art in a way that brings about endurance. It's interesting, the balloon animal is very temporary, but the way that he created his art, those balloon animals were enduring in as much as anything is enduring. So, interesting. Camp and kitsch. All right, so what's going to help us endure is tapping into maybe the zeitgeist of what's popular in the culture. It's going to be hard to see that. Let's lay it down here. And finding out how to use what's available at hand to create something that's enduring. That's really interesting. And we'll set our stone off to the side here as well. Again, the stone just uses water to create its endurance, or to transform what's enduring about it. And the way we're going to do a reading today is we're going to shuffle up our Hebrunes and grab a handful and toss them down and read what's there. Nope, I've got those ones and one that went on the floor. I'm going to pop it in there too. All right, let's turn these all so that they are face up. And then take that one out. We only ended up with 4, which is fine. There's plenty to read here. So at the top of our reading, we have the letter Beit. And the letter Beit represents a house or any kind of structure. It is the letter that is the second letter of the alphabet, the letter Bet. And it's the first letter of the Torah, which is Bereshit. So even though it's number 2, it becomes number 1. And I think that's interesting with regards to this artist, Jeff Koons, even though he's using other popular art to make his art, and I guess in the same way Andy Warhol did, is using other images to create new images with it. He finds a way to have innovation and newness. So the letter Beit is about home and house and body. It is where we dwell, and regardless of where we dwell and what structure we dwell in, we always carry our body with us. So I think of Beit as being the body a lot of the time. It's the binary transformation of life and death in the Sefer Yetzirah. So where do we land on that continuum? What is alive and what is dead? And I think that's an interesting question when it comes to art as well. What is alive and what is dead? What is passé and what is current? How do we use what is popular to create something that's long-lasting, longer than what would normally exist in the popular culture? It is the letter that rules over Shabbat, the day of Shabbat, and the planet Saturn in the sky. Shabbat, which is all about taking a rest. It's the last day of creation, Shabbat. So we've come to an end here with Beit, even though it is the first letter of Torah. So it's got that contradiction in it of life and death and beginning and the end of creation. So that's up for endurance, is how do we make what is second first? How do we make what is new something that we can find rest in? That's one way to endure. The next letter in our reading is the letter Lamed, landed right here below the card, and it's the letter that begins the word Lev, which means heart, heart-mind. How do we tap into our heart and our mind in order to reach up toward divinity? It is the one letter that reaches above the line, so it has this connotation of hope as we reach up. And learning and teaching, limud v'lamed, which means to teach and to learn, both begin with lamed. So it's about learning something and then teaching from it, taking something maybe old or popular and turning it around and looking at it from a different angle and then turning it back toward the world and teaching. It's the foundation of action in the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation. So taking something and making action with it. And taking things in and digesting them. It is the intestines in the body. So how do we take something in and digest it and discern what we'd like to keep, what is nutritious, what is useful, and discard the rest. So that idea of discernment is wrapped up in the Lamed. It is the letter that is affiliated with the tribe of Ephraim, who is one of the sons of Joseph. And he was the son that was the second son, but he was elevated above his brother Manasseh by the blessing of Jacob. So even if, again, we've come second, we can be raised up to become first, like the same way the Beit, being the second letter, becomes the first letter of Torah. So but something is about here about something second becoming first again. Interesting. The next letter in our reading is the letter Nun, and the letter Nun is that letter that looks like it's bowed or bent over. It's the letter that means humility. Ne'eman means humble. But it's also the first letter of the word Nes, meaning miracle. So finding ourselves in humility can sometimes show us the miracle that's coming in. It's about loyalty and it's about faithfulness. And there's this chime that tells me Shekhinah is here. So our endurance comes from loyalty and faithfulness and humility and locomotion, starting out slowly and then building up momentum and speed as we go along. And when we find our humility, we'll be able to see the miracle in whatever it is that we are looking for. It's the letter that is affiliated with the stomach in the Sefer Yetzirah, in the body. So it's about digestion again, about taking something in and chewing over it and really taking time to sit with it in humility. I see as Nun as corresponding to the Hermit card in Tarot. So really taking our time to sit with something in humility, to digest it, to chew on it. Not chew on it with our mouths, but chew on it with our bodies, to really sit with it and digest it and discern what is useful and what is not. And then use our intestines to excrete that or absorb it as need be. So a lot of, and this is the one that's affiliated with the tribe of Manasseh, the child who was first born to Joseph, who was humbled then by his brother who was elevated above him. So it's interesting, we have both Ephraim and Manasseh here. Manasseh being lower as the person who was humbled, and Ephraim rised up to the son who was elevated as the firstborn by his grandfather's blessing. So that's fascinating that we have both of them here, both humility and aspiration. And the last letter in our reading is the letter Tav, appropriately, since it is the last letter of the alphabet as well. So it's the letter that ends our alphabet. It's a stamp or a seal or a signature on something. So something has come to an end, a completion. And it has to do with endings, but then because nothing ever ends, it has to do with new beginnings as well. So something comes to an end and then it begins again. There's this finality of truth. It is the last letter of the word emet, which means truth. And so we have this finality, but again, a new beginning as we start all over again. There is this impression that has been stamped into it. And I think of it in terms of ancestors, like our ancestral DNA has been stamped onto us, and we are having that expressed through whatever it is we are performing or creating in the world. So there's something here about endings and new beginnings and reincarnations and past generations being expressed now into our lives. So really interesting reading with this card from Jeff Koons saying that we can take what might seem old or hackneyed or maybe kitsch and turn it into something valuable and artistic with our, if we can endure, if we can really persist in whatever it is we're trying to do. We have this second letter becoming the first. We have this second letter that rules over the final day of creation in our bodies, in our homes, wherever it is we dwell. That we have the Lamed reaching up with heart toward aspiration, bringing things in, digesting them, coming out with something that's valuable. The idea of Ephraim being raised up as the second son toward primacy, toward the one who inherits. And Manasseh in the letter Nun being humbled in this letter Nun of humility. But when we become humble, we can find the miracle in the situation and sit with it and digest it and determine, again, what is valuable and how can we turn what we've taken into something of value. And then we come to the ending, something that is a stamp or a seal that brings us back to the beginning again. So I love that with this stone that's been smoothed over by the river. And it almost looks like that balloon here on the card. So taking what is impermanent and making it permanent, taking that which seems silly and frivolous and making it art. I love this for you. So this is your way of finding endurance in your life right now, your way of finding that which will last. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed your reading, and I will see you here next time.